प्रिया और 3 है जी पापा, एक ना आपने दे दी थी, याद है अपना।
Good morning to all. Has the meeting started?
Not yet, sir. I think 10 more minutes.
सांगितलेलं.
Ashappa. How many students are there?
Total 91 participants are there now.
91.
Yeah.
Very good. आया क्या उनका? अरे दादा, ये देखो बायोडाटा आया नहीं अभी तक, ये हाई कर रहा है, इसके ऊपर भेजो।
एक मिनट। हाँ।
forge, run, telescope build. Or the pommel, and then it's a resin ivory handle. Jesse, how do you do it for you?
Pretty well. I've used ACRV too as well for my stick. The wrought iron for the hilt and the pommel is a
आना है तो नदी दिखा दी। तुमने कहा अकेले नहाना है तो मैं यहाँ आ गया। उस तरफ राम तुम्हारा वेट कर रहा था।
मैं वापस नहीं
ज्वाइन नहीं हुआ करके बता दो। हाँ? बता दिया ना? हाँ।
कैसा बनाया तूने? सारा जल गया है। वैसे कहाँ से? ज्यादा पड़ गया सर। ऊपर से धूप भी ना।
Yes, students, keep your video off. Nitin, Sanjay. Just as joining shortly, just wait for 5 minutes.
Shraddha, Rajas, Akshay, yet session has not started. Once the session will start, you can hear.
आवाज बच जाएगा कहीं का नहीं जोड़े
Good morning, ma'am. Yes, good morning, Bankar ma'am.
काय चालू करत नाही तू होत किंवा नाही करत?
मॅम तुम्हाला आवाज येतोय आमचा?
हॅलो हॅलो, आवाज येतोय मॅडम?
Sir, we are able to hear you.
Yes. Can we start now?
Audible, sir.
So shall we start?
Sir, audible.
Gojari, please start the program.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings to one and all present here. I, Gojiri Shinde, from LLB first year, TMV's Lokmanya Tilak Law College, extend a very warm welcome to our today's guest speaker, Honorable Srimati P. Bankar Madam, District Judge 1 and Additional Session Judge at Mangaon. Our Principal, Dr. Prakash Deshmukh Sir, all participants and faculty members of TMV to today's webinar organized by our prestigious institution in collaboration with District Legal Aid Committee. On the occasion of Women's Day, our guest speaker, Srimati P. Bankar Madam, will enlighten us on the topic Women Empowerment and Procedural Amendments of Section 498 of Indian Penal Code. Before we go ahead with today's program, I would like to mention certain rules to be followed by all students throughout the session. It is requested to all the students to keep their video and mic off during the session so as to avoid the disturbance. And it is also a kind request to please type your questions in the chat box, and we shall be taking the same at the end during question and answer session so that the program will be conducted in a smoother manner and there will be no interruptions. I would now request to our principal, Dr. Prakash Deshmukh Sir, to kindly begin with the today's program by welcoming our guest speaker.
Good morning to everybody. Good morning, ma'am. Honorable District Judge and Additional Session Judge, Mangaon, Mrs. Priya Pramod Bankar, Madam. Taluka Legal Aid Service Committee, Panvel, District Raigad, Honorable Dr. Deepak J. Tilak Ji Sir, President, Chancellor, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit, and our Kharghar campus mentor, Honorable Mrs. Dr. Praniti Rohit Tilak, Learned Mahesh Logaukar Sir, Honorable Sri Sandeep Swami, Secretary of Legal Aid Raigad District, and Coordinator Learned Varsha Badwe Madam, and also Coordinator MSW Learned Smita Waghade Madam, Coordinator Campus Science Department Mrs. Purnima Jangle Madam, and other learned assistant professors, staffs, and their students. Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit is TMV. Established in 1921, is recognized by the Government of India as the deemed to be university. Under Section 3 of the UGC Act 1956, since 1987, we offer the programs in multiple disciplines such as Ayurveda, sounds good. Social science, modern science, professional skills, management, health science, law, and distance education. TME Lokmanya Tilak Law College was established in the year 2013 and approved by the Bar Council of India for the BA LLB 5-year course and also LLB 3-year course are offered in its pursuant excellence. Our institution aim at not only the professionalist but also ethical values and social responsibility, and hence the crucial is designated to the transcend the boundaries of academic to be relevant to the changing corporate and social requirements. We are organizing an online legal aid and programs on the topics of the women empowerment and the procedural amendment of Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. In this coming semester, we are organizing the trial court, police station, jail visits, high court visits, and get practical legal knowledge of our students. We are also organizing the moot court competitions and also international moot court competitions in our college campus. All India reports subscriptions taken by the college for the educational enhancement of the students. It is well equipped with case laws, national, international laws, important laws, and informations and many more informations available for the students at one place in our college campus with absolutely no cost. I welcome our Honorable Principal Judge of Raigad District, Mrs. Ingle Madam, along with a speaker on behalf of the Ingle Madam. I welcome today's speaker, Honorable District Judge and Additional Session Judge, Mangaon, Mrs. Priyanka Pramod Bankar, on the topic of the women empowerment and the procedure amendment of Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. I welcome Honorable Deepak G. Tilakji, sir, President, Chancellor of Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith, and our Kharghar campus mentor, Honorable Mrs. Dr. Praniti Tilak, Madam, Learned Mahesh Logaogar, sir, and beloved Principal Dr. K.K. Sriram Murthy, sir, Head of the Department of Pune campus, Court staff, Learned Coordinator, Mrs. Varsha Badwe, Madam, Coordinator, MSW, Mrs. Mita Varghade, Madam, Coordinator, Computer Science Department, Purnima Jangle, Madam, and all my beloved assistant professors, staffs, course staffs, and dear students. Please.
Yes, Pujari sir is done with this.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now request our today's guest speaker to enlighten us all by commencing with today's session. Please, ma'am. Ma'am, I think you are on mute. We are unable to hear you.
Okay. Yes, good morning to all. Now I am audible to you.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Okay. Today's subject, first we will discuss about the first subject, women empowerment. For that, But prior to begin with the session, I would like to apologize for some minutes I couldn't contact you as there was a program in the court that was a few minutes I was unable to contact you. So please apologize me for that. Otherwise, the time is we normally observe the time. So now we begin with the first subject, women empowerment. For that, we have to go back. First of all, please tell me, madam, which language will you prefer, in a Marathi or English, or in a both language?
Both.
Both?
Yes, madam.
Okay, ठीक आहे. So आपण आधी पहिल्यांदा पाहू की why the celebration of Women's Day. वुमन्स डे ची सुरुवात जी झाली ती स्त्री हक्काच्या चळवळीवरून झालेली आहे. जगातील सगळ्या स्त्रियांनी एकत्र येऊन त्यांच्या शांततेसाठी, न्यायासाठी आणि समानतेसाठी, विकासासाठी जो लढा दिला आणि त्यामध्ये इम्प्रूव्हमेंट होणं आवश्यक आहे आणि जे आपले अडथळे आलेले आहेत ते पार करण्यासाठी धाडसाची जी आवश्यकता आहे आणि संभाव्य उद्दिष्ट जी गाठायची आहेत त्याच्या करता आपल्याला वुमन्स डेचं सेलिब्रेशन करायचं आहे. बऱ्याच लोकांना असं वाटतं की त्यात काही विशेष नाहीये आणि मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द पीपल हॅव देअर ओपिनियन, तर यांच्यावर काही अन्याय वगैरे झालेला नाहीये आणि या समानच हक्क उपभोगतात वगैरे. इट्स जे काही ग्रास होतो समाजाच्या याच्यातून हे असं आहे की यांच्यावर काही अन्याय झालेला नाहीये. आणि हे कळण्यासाठी की कोणत्या परिस्थितीतून कोणत्या स्टेजला महिला होती आणि ती कोणत्या स्टेजला आज आलेली आहे, त्याच्यासाठी आपल्याला फार मागे जायचं आहे, एन्शियंट इरामध्ये जायचं आहे आणि तेव्हाची स्त्रीची जी पोझिशन होती तेव्हापासून ती आतापर्यंत कशी बदलत गेली आणि याच्या पुढे अजून किती बदलणं आवश्यक आहे. आणि त्याच्यासाठी म्हणून या प्रोसेसमध्ये आपल्याला गेलं पाहिजे आणि त्याच्यातून कायदेशीर दृष्टिकोनातून स्त्रियांना कसे हक्क आणि अधिकार दिले गेले याचा आपण विचार करायला पाहिजे. आता त्यासाठी एक फॉर एक्झाम्पल म्हणून मी पहिल्यांदा स्त्रियांचा मालमत्ते संबंधीचा जो अधिकार आहे त्याच्याबाबत हे करेल. फर्स्ट, अगदी पूर्वीच्या काळी स्त्रियांना कोणताही मालमत्तेमध्ये अधिकार नव्हता. म्हणजे वडिलांकडून त्यांना काही मालमत्ता मिळत नव्हती. ऍज अ इमोव्हेबल प्रॉपर्टीच्या संदर्भात बोलते आणि तिच्या पतीच्या घरी या दोन्ही ठिकाणी तिचा कुठल्याही इमोव्हेबल प्रॉपर्टीवर कोणताही अधिकार नव्हता. हा, तेव्हाच्या काळी पण स्त्रीधन दॅट वॉज द एक्सक्लुझिव्ह प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ दॅट वुमन आणि त्यावर तिचा संपूर्ण अधिकार असायचा. शी हॅज अ राईट टू डिस्पोज ऑफ दॅट प्रॉपर्टी ऍट हर ओन. म्हणजे फक्त मुव्हेबल प्रॉपर्टी जी होती त्यावर तिचा अधिकार होता आणि इमोव्हेबल प्रॉपर्टीमध्ये कोणताही अधिकार नव्हता. हा जो स्त्रियांचा मालमत्तेचा हक्क मिळण्याचा जो प्रोग्रेस झाला त्याच्यामध्ये पहिल्यांदा जो शास्त्रीक आणि कस्टमरी लॉ प्रमाणे हे होत होते, त्यांना हक्क अधिकार मिळत, पण तिथे म्हणजे इव्हन हिंदूंमध्ये हक्क मिळत होते पण तिथे स्त्रियांना हक्क नव्हता. त्यानंतर कोडिफाईड लॉ आला. कोडिफाईड लॉ मध्ये पण 1955 पूर्वीची पोझिशन वेगळी होती आणि आफ्टर 1955 नंतरची पोझिशन वेगळी आहे. 1955 पूर्वीचे जर पोझिशन आपण विचारात घेतली तर त्याच्यामध्ये एकूण
All, please mute your mics.
Okay, any problem, ma'am?
No problem.
1955 पूर्वीची जर पोझिशन आपण विचारात घेतली तर 1856 साली हिंदू विडोज रिमॅरेज ऍक्ट आला. म्हणजे आपण पाहू शकतो की 1856च्या आधी इव्हन विडोला पुन्हा मॅरेज करण्याचा अधिकार नव्हता आणि म्हणून या कायद्याने त्यांना रिमॅरेज करण्याचा हक्क दिला. या कायद्याने हिंदू विडोचं जर मॅरेज झालं तर ते लिगलाइज केलं. आणि पण याच्यामध्ये अट घातली, इफ शी रिमॅरीज शी सीज टू बी अ मेंबर ऑफ द फॅमिली. तिला त्या फॅमिलीतून मेंबर म्हणता येणार नाही आणि एनी प्रायव्हेट प्रॉपर्टी वॉज तिच्याकडे असेल तर दॅट प्रॉपर्टी विल बी डायव्हर्स्ड. ती पुन्हा तिच्या आधीच्या त्या घराकडे जाईल. असं या कायद्याचं थोडक्यात हे होतं. त्यानंतर आला द हिंदू लॉ ऑफ इनहेरिटन्स अमेंडमेंट ऍक्ट 1929. याच्यामध्ये प्रथमतः मुलीची मुलगी, बहीण आणि तिचा मुलगा यांना मिळकतीमध्ये हक्क प्राप्त झाले. त्यानंतर हिंदू वुमन्स राईट टू प्रॉपर्टी ऍक्ट 1937. या कायद्याने पहिल्यांदा हिंदू स्त्रीला तिच्या पतीच्या मिळकतीमध्ये मुलाप्रमाणे हिस्सा मिळाला. त्यानंतर 1946 ला द हिंदू वुमन्स राईट टू सेपरेट रेसिडेंट अँड मेंटेनन्स. हा जो आत्ताच्या काळामध्ये जो आपण पोटगी हा जो कॉमन शब्द झालेला आहे सगळ्यांसाठी की पोटगी मिळण्याकरताचा हक्क, तो इट वॉज गिव्हन इन 1946 फर्स्ट टाइम. आणि याच्यामध्ये आणि पोटगी मिळण्याकरताही काही अटी ठेवण्यात आल्या होत्या. त्याच्यामध्ये जर पतीला समजा एखादा तिरस्कारणीय रोग झाला असेल किंवा त्यांनी क्रुएल्टी, डेझर्शन किंवा त्यांनी पुन्हा लग्न केलेलं असेल आणि त्यांनी हिंदू म्हणून ही बिकम सीज टू बी अ हिंदू, त्यांनी कंक्युबाईन ठेवली असेल आणि अशा कोणत्याही योग्य कारणांकरता तिला
मॅम सॉरी टू डिस्टर्ब यू इन बिटवीन. ऍक्च्युली तुम्ही जर का हिंदी इंग्लिश वापरलं ना तर ते बऱ्याच मुलांना समजेल. मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टुडंट्स
दॅट्स व्हाय आय टेल विच लँग्वेज वी विल प्रिफर. कारण मराठी आणि इंग्लिश असं दोन्हीमध्ये, कारण की ऍक्टची नावं आहेत ती मी पुन्हा हे करू शकत नाही.
हिंदी इंग्लिश केलं तर ते जास्त सोपं होईल मुलांना समजेल.
प्लीज मॅम गिव्ह मी 1 minute सो दॅट खूप गडबडीत आले. आय विल ब्रिंग अ वॉटर प्लीज. सॉरी. Hello everyone.
Yes, please.
Yes, sorry. So accordingly, such a type of acts were passed by the legislation to give certain rights to a woman in a property, in a immovable property. Now coming to the position after 1955. Hindu Succession Act 1956 was passed, in which the under section 40, the rights have been given. Some rights have been given. I said some rights have been given in immovable property. As per section 40, the property which vests with the that woman, she become its absolute owner. Now we can take one example to see what were the rights given by the 1956 Act. Take an example that one father having his wife and 2 children. One is a daughter and one is a son. In that case, the daughter will not get any right during lifetime of father in the property, ancestral property. She will get right after her father's death. He died, her father died. Then what the right she will get in the immobile property, we can see that we call it a notional partition. As per notional partition, the share of the father will be 1/3. Though he is dead, notional share has been given a 1/3. 1/3 share has been given to his wife, and 1/3 share has been given to his son. Now, in that 1/3 share of the father, again, the share of her mother, her brother, and that daughter. So ultimately, she will get 1/9 share against the share of her brother is 4/9 and her mother 4/9. So you can see this discrimination, that she couldn't get a equal share as of her brother. Even there are other circumstances that she is not going to ask for a partition in a dwelling house, except some male member has demand partition. So these are some drawbacks, we can say drawbacks of that law of the year 1956 Act, and therefore the Act of 2005 has come into force. It is an amended Act. Prior to that, in the year 1994, there is a Bombay Amendment in Section 29, and that Act has given co-personary right to the daughter. She can be treated as a son, and she has given a co-personary right. But in that Act also, the daughter who has married prior to 1994 was excluded from her co-personary right. So therefore, therefore again, it is a Central Amended Act 2005 come into force, and now it has been given equal rights to daughters in the property of their father. So she has been now treated as like a son for, and she can take as like a son. That means by birth she is entitled for rights in the property. She became a co-parcener, and also the liabilities have been given to her like in respect of the co-parcenary property. So this is an act. We can see that till 2005, the daughter couldn't get the similar rights in the property of her father, or we can say not a property of her father, that is a co-personal property, which is inherited by father from his father and his grandfather. So that is a co-personal property, and she couldn't get an equal right. So we can say till 2005, the same position was with the women, and it was changed after 2005. This is one of the example to state that how the progress has done while giving the rights to the woman or our own daughter in a property, ancestral property. Now, these acts are in respect of the property of the woman or daughter. Apart from that, there are other acts. I want to mention only the act's name, so you can see that was the progress has been done. This act has to be passed to give the equal footings to the woman in the society. The first act, we can say, in the past, in the year 1986, which is the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act, which was passed in the 1986, which is against any obscene advertisement, publication, writing, printing, figure, or any manner. Then the second act is the Immoral Traffic Act Prevention Act 1956, passed in the 1956. The Medical Termination of the Pregnancy Act 1971, which provides for the termination of certain pregnancy by registered medical practitioner. Then Dowry Prohibition Act, Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929. And you can see this act is passed in the year 1929, and now it is 100th year. We are reaching in 100 year, but still we can see there are child marriages. There are certain cases in which the bride was below 18 years, though this act is passed in a way back in 1929. Then we can say the 2005 is a drastic change in which a Domestic Violence Act has been passed, and for first time the violence on a woman has been recognized by the legislation, and the Domestic Violence Act is passed. Prior to that, in 1994, the Preconception and Prenatal Diagnosis Technique Prohibition of Sex Selection Act 1994 has been passed. Why the necessity of passing this type of acts? Because it was noticed that many abortion has taken place when it was detected that it was a girl child. So for that purpose, this type of act has come into force. Then Maternity Benefits Act, and before, and in the 1987, there are Sati Pratha Pratibandha Kaida. So such a type of acts have been passed. Now in 1948, now coming to the workplace, after the ladies have come forward, come outside their house and are now going to the workplace. So there is a necessity to give certain directions to the factories owner, etc. And then the Factories Act 1948 has been come into force, in which certain direction has been given that there should be a 9 hours, the work timing should be 9 hours per day. If it is a woman, the timings will not be between 10 p.m. to 5 p.m. And if there is a girl or woman who is in between 14 to 18 years age working in such a factory, the timings will be morning 8 to 7 p.m. And the other amenities such like a latrine and drinking water, etc., the provision has been made in that act. So in a 1948, said act has been passed. Thereafter, again a issue raised about the sexual harassment of a woman at a working place. Till 2013, there was no act. So the Honorable Supreme Court in a case of Vishakha has given certain directions for the sexual harassment of women at a workplace. And thereafter, in the 2013, said act has been passed. What is, and for what purpose the said act has been passed? It was passed sexual harassment. We found that the sexual harassment results in a violation of the fundamental rights of the woman to equality under Article 14 and 15 of Constitution, and her right to life and to life with a dignity under Article 21, and right to practice and profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business which includes a right to a safe environment free from sexual harassment. So for that purpose, this act come into force. It given a some preventive actions, some protection, and even a redressal, a remedy for the complaints under this act. These are some acts. It list cannot be exhaustive, but these are the some acts which are passed to protect a working woman woman from the sexual harassment. Please. Now, coming to the physical violence with the woman, we can say there are many offenses which are against criminal offenses against women, as mentioned in the Indian Penal Code. And you being a law student, very well aware about, I think, Indian Penal Code, in which these offenses have been mentioned. You can see there are the offenses like outraging the modesty of a woman, rape, kidnapping, and the offenses under the Dowry Prohibition Act and abatement of suicide, etc. A list. Now coming to the section, another topic, that is the section 498A. What is the 498A? What is the requirement of the 498A? It's a harassment to the married woman by her husband or her relatives for a demand of dowry and such a type that she will commit suicide or any injury to herself. So that type of harassment has if meted with the married woman, she can lodge complaint with the police under section 498. If there is a physical assault to her, she was abused and given insulting, and she has been insulted. No food has been provided to her. She has been locked in her house or have been prohibited to go outside the house. She has been refused to meet her children, and many others acts which can come under section 498A to hold that complainant is subject to a cruelty or harassment by her in-laws. And one another feature is that she has been subjected to such cruelty and harassment for the demand of dowry. What are the actually subject is the procedural amendments in section 498A. As to the procedure which we adopted in the code, there are no changes. The same procedure we are adopting, but yes, there are some changes in a arrest and detention issue of the accused in connection with section 498A of the IPC. And there are various judgments of the Honorable High Court, Honorable Supreme Court on the said point to let down the procedure while the accused is arrested in section in connection with the offense punishable under section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. In this regard, we have also to go way back in the 1996, where in a case of D.K. Basu versus the state of West Bengal, the issue was about the death of the arrestee in a police custody. These direction has been issued Those are not in a case of 498A of Indian Penal Code. However, these directions are applicable to all the detainee, that means the accused person who has been arrested by the police in a different type of offenses. So these guidelines also applicable in a case of 498A IPC. So I can mention those guidelines given in a case of DK Basu. In that case, the question was about the death of the arrestee in a police custody, and that's why these directions have been given to the police officers who are going to arrest the accused person. The directions were the police officer carrying out the arrest and handling interrogation should bear accurate, visible, and clear identification and name tags with their designation. And particulars of such a police personnel must be recorded in a register. Then, police officer at the time of the arrest prepare memo shall be attested by one family member of the arrestee or respectable persons of the locality, and the said memo has to be countersigned by the arrestee. One friend or relative or person having an interest in the arrestee has to be informed as soon as practicable about the arrest of the accused. The time, place of arrest, and venue of custody of an arrestee must be notified. When next friend or relatives of arrestee lives outside the district or town through legal organization in a district and through telegraphically within 8 to 12 hours of arrest, the said next friend or relative has to be informed about the arrest. The person who has been arrested must be made aware his rights that to someone have informed of his arrest as soon as he is put under arrest. Entry of arrest must be in the diary about detention with a name of next friend whom arrest is informed. At the request of the arrestee, his minor or major injuries must be recorded. The inspection memo in this regard has to be prepared, and it has to be signed by the arrestee and police officer. Medical examination of arrestee has to be carried out every 48 hours during his detention period and by a doctor on a panel. Copies of the documents and memo of arrest should be sent to the magistrate. Arrestee may be permitted to meet his lawyer during interrogation. Arrestee should be communicated the information of the arrest should be communicated to police control room within 12 hours, and police control room has to display the same information on their notice board. So these are the directions have been given in a case of DK Basu by the Honorable Appeals Court, which are also applicable to the arrestee in a case of 498A of IPC. Then now, as to this Act 498A, the specific direction has been given in a case of Arnish Kumar versus State of Bihar. In a 2014, these directions has been given, while the instances has been noticed that the names of the relatives of her husband has been unnecessarily implemented in the complaint, which going to cause inconvenience of these relatives who are residing outside town or even abroad. So therefore, the Honorable Apex Court find it necessary to give certain directions in respect of the arrest in section 498 of IPC, and therefore these directions have been given. In a These are the specific directions given in a case of 498A in Indian Penal Code. These directions are not to automatically arrest when case is under section 498A IPC, but the investigation officer has to satisfy themselves for arrest and under the parameter laid down under section 41 of CRPC. Then it has been mandatory to prepare checklists specified under section 41(1)(b) second after the arrest. The checklist duly forward the magistrate for further detention. That checklist has to be forwarded to the magistrate if there is a further detention of the accused is required. Magistrate should pursue the said report, and after recording only its satisfaction, will authorize the further detention. Then decision about not to arrest accused be forwarded to the magistrate within 2 weeks from the date of the institution of the case. Same, notice of appearance under section 41A CRPC be served on the accused within 2 weeks from institution of the case, that is institution of the FIR. If any police officer fails to comply with these directions, he was liable for the departmental inquiry action. And if any magistrate also failed to comply with these directions, he was also for a departmental action by the appropriate honorable courts. So these are the directions which are given in Arnesh Kumar versus State of Bihar, which in respect of section 498 of IPC, which were in the 2014. Prior to that, in the year 2013, in a case of Lalita Kumari versus Government of UP, the question was before whether the police officer was bound to register FIR in a cognizable offense. As we can see, section 498A is a cognizable and non-bearable offense. And in such a cases, whether it was necessary for the police officer to conduct any preliminary inquiry or to directly register the offense. In the case of Lalita Kumari, it was held by the Honorable Supreme Court that as to what type and which case, in which case the preliminary inquiry is to be conducted will depend on the facts and the circumstances of the case. While and even the types of the cases have been given, in which it has been said that in these following cases, the preliminary inquiry can be done. And in that case, the matrimonial dispute, family dispute was included. So we can say those directions can also applicable under section for cases under section 498A, as it is a matrimonial dispute between the parties. Now, coming to the case of Rajesh Sharma versus State of UP, in the year 2017, there were certain directions have been given by the Honorable Supreme Court for detention in respect of the arrest and detention of the accused in a case under section 498 of Indian Penal Code. In this case, the directions were, please. In that case, the directions were to constitute family welfare committee having a one or more members through district legal services authorities. This committee can be formed including paralegal volunteers, social workers, retired persons, wives of officers, etc. These committee members may not be called as witnesses. Every complaint was looked into by the said committee. Report of the said committee has to be informed within 1 month to the authority by whom the complaint was referred to them. Report may be about factual aspects and their opinion. Till the report has not been submitted, there was no arrest and detention. The report has to be considered on its own merits. And other directions also about the basic trainings of the committee members, honorarium, and cost fund by the district. These are the directions. But before going to forward, I would like to here mention that another 3-bench judgment by the Honorable Apex Court in a case of Social Action Forum for Manav Adhikar, delivered on 14th September 2018. That is a recent judgment by three judges bench. These directions in respect given in a Rajesh Sharma, which was given as per para 19. It was held that these directions are not in accordance with a statutory framework, and therefore now it is not mandatory to us to follow these directions. In a subsequent judgment, it has been opined that these are not a mandatory, which is not with a statutory framework. Normally, even the directions has been given, even we can see in a case of DK Basu, those directions has been given, and thereafter subsequently the law was amended, section 41 was amended, and those directions are incorporated in a statute. And the other directions, even in this case, I am going forward about the other directions. There is a provision in a statute in respect of these directions, and the judicial officer can act upon it as per his discretion. He can take decision in respect of these type of these directions. But we can say now these directions talk about the forming of committee, etc. Those are not now approved. Coming to the forward about the next direction, about the investigation. The investigation should be carried out by the trained officer. If there is a settlement reached, then the district and session judge or any other senior judicial officer has given a power to dispose of that case. I would here like to mention that the said direction has been now modified by the in a case of Social Action Forum for Manav Adhikar by the Honorable Apex Court, and instead of a district and session judge or any it was modified to the extent that the concerned party can approach to the Honorable High Court, concerned Honorable High Court, under Section 482 of CRPC. The directions was also given about the bail application, that it has to be decided on the same day, and the recovery of disputed dowry items may not be a ground for denial of bail. Then Again, directions where impounding of passport and issuance of red corner notice should not be a routine course in these matters. And then to club the connected matters cases, and which has been and trial has to be conducted at a one place. Next direction was about the personal appearance of the family members which are residing at outstation may not be required. And next direction was that these directions are not applicable to the involving a tangible physical injury in the offenses like physical injury. So these were the directions which were given in a case of Rajesh Sharma case. So as I have stated earlier, these directions, some directions are not mentioned as not according to the statutory framework, and some have been modified. However, the directions about the training of the police officer and the bail application and dispensing with the personal appearance of the accused and impounding, etc. In this regard, there is an opinion that these are not erroneous, and already there is a provision in the statute. So while dealing with these directions, the magistrate or the concerned court can take into account the statute provisions that even about the dispensing with the personal attendance of the accused person during trial, there is a provision in a CRPC. So not only in a 498 cases, but in other cases also, we can follow that procedure for dispense with the personal attendance of the accused person during trial. So that can be seen. About the bail, and imposing certain conditions, that is impounding your passport and etc. And there are provisions that taking into seriousness of the consideration, taking into consideration the seriousness of the matter, the court can impose such a type of conditions while granting bail. So these conditions, directions which are given are not erroneous, and that can be followed by the concerned judicial officer by using their judicial discretion. It is depend upon the facts and circumstances of each case. The direction cannot be applied for all the cases that such type of case come before the court, and it is not, for example, a case come before a court and the accused are residing outside out of India, then it is not always necessary to impound his passport. It's the facts and circumstances of each case that's the magistrate, that concerned magistrate will verify that facts and circumstances of the case and then pass such a type of order. So this is the position of 498A, which I have stated due to the various pronunciations of the Honorable Supreme Court. These guidelines have been given for the arrest and detentions of the accused in 498A cases. So now the last directions in this regards are Social Action Forum for Manavadhikar, which are in the year 2018, and we have to go through that judgment to see that which directions in respect of the arrest and detention of the accused persons have to be followed. So according to me, now it has been covered all the aspect of the arrest and detentions of 498 arrestee under section 498A. So both subjects, I think I was in a position to depart some knowledge on this both subjects which have given to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We would now begin with question and answer session.
Oh,
I would request everyone to kindly start asking their question one by one.
Dear students, you can unmute one by one and you can ask the question. Yes, Abhay, you can ask your question to ma'am directly.
I think students were in a position to understand, because it is not our routine course to give lectures, but it is our day-to-day work. Definitely, it is our day-to-day work. On these sections, we are going through this section 498, arrest and detention of the accused person. So I think the students will be in a position to understand what I said. I have done my best.
Ma'am, can I ask one
Yes.
question?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I'm Kishore. Is there any amendment or further new law under consideration with the law authority for women empowerment? Is there any?
No. I understand your question, but I do not understand on what subject you are going to ask. Women empowerment is a more total empowerment of the woman. It is a include this legislation. There are other aspects, social, economic, etc., etc. So, what subject you want?
All subject. Is there any laws means in amendment? Is there any amendment?
No,
or new
last,
laws?
according to me, as I have said in my lecture, the last amendment is in the 2005,
right.
which has given the right in a immovable property and treated a daughter as like a son. In the same 2005, a Domestic Violence Act has come into force. So these are the two basic laws about the physical atrocities on a woman and about their property, their right to property. So this is the last law in the 2005. Now, as I said, in the decisions of the Honorable Supreme Court, there are certain directions are given. Again and again, certain directions have been given, but not a law. There is not law. These are the directions or certain case laws on these points, but not law. That's not a statute. Law is not amended till yet. However, there are certain directions given by the Honorable Supreme Court in their respective judgments.
Okay, ma'am.
Any more questions?
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning to all faculties. First of all, happy Women's Day.
Good morning.
Ma'am, thanks for briefing us on all the latest laws that has been amended in empowerment of women. But there are, if I talk on the instance of 498A, I belong to such cases are such complaints are very frequent these days.
Yes.
And some are true and some are in a form of revenge.
Yes.
So can this false complaint be a ground for divorce?
False complaint will, for that purpose, first of all, there is many questions that you have to prove that it is a false case. That proof is necessary. The false complaint has been lodged, so you have to prove it. You are not just to mention that this false complaint is lodged against me. The every accused come before the court stating that this type of false complaint lodged against me. So bare words of your words that this is a false complaint will not be accepted by the court. That certain conclusions has before the court or the certain decisions has come before the court to state that these type of false complaint have been filed with the intention to harass. That is, the harassment is the one of the ground for divorce. So to connect that harassment, you have to prove this. That means the proof is required, not the bare contention that this is a false complaint.
But ma'am, what my little knowledge is, burden of proof should be on the person who is accusing it, because at times it becomes very difficult for a husband family to prove. Because
no, first of all, I have to mention here that the burden of proof in a criminal cases is always rest upon the prosecution. Is always rest upon the prosecution. The prosecution has to prove that this accused has committed offense. So and in a civil matters, it is a preponderance of probability, and that burden can be shifted in a civil matter. Now you are talking about the divorce. This is a civil dispute, and in that case, the burden can be shifted on a other party. That condition apply. What is their averments in the pleading?
if the accusing party could not prove, then can it be considered as a false allegation?
That's why I am telling the accused has not to prove anything. In a criminal matter, you understand it, that in a criminal matter, accused has not to prove anything. Even accused has said, no, I have not done, there are certain allegations against the accused, and he keep mum saying that, no, I have not done anything. That is his defense. In that case also, the entire burden is upon the prosecution to prove that case. What evidence has come before court, what the evidence come before the court has to evaluate that evidence, and the accused has to do nothing in his defense. He can do, there is no problem. He can, in defense, he can put his evidence, he can examine witnesses and produce document, etc. But the burden never shift upon the accused in a criminal cases.
Okay.
The entire burden of the complainant who come before the court stating that I was harassed and the cruelty has been done and there was a demand of dowry, etc. The entire burden is upon the complainant who came before court.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Today, on the occasion of Women's Day, nothing would have been more special than the session taken up by guest speaker. Today's session have not only enlightened our knowledge, but also boosted us morally. It was an honor for all of us to hear from you. I would now request to Assistant Professor Smita Bansode ma'am to kindly end up today's session by delivering a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kojiri. A very good morning to all. On this occasion of Women's Day, I want to dedicate few lines to all women. She is a believer. She is a doer. She is an achiever. She is a woman. She is you. Happy Women's Day to all women present here. I, Assistant Professor Smita Bansode, TMV's Lokmanya Tilak Law College, Kharghar. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks to all the dignitaries present here from this successful session. I would like to thank on my behalf and on behalf of this institution to our guest speaker, Honorable P.P. Bankar, District Judge, Additional Session Judge Mangaon. Madam has spent spare time from their busy schedule and honored this event with their illuminating knowledge about women's property rights and various acts related to women, and also legal aid facilities. It will definitely help our students and us. I extend my gratitude and cordially thankful to Honorable Chancellor Dr. Deepak Tilak Sir, Campus Director Dr. Pranati Tilak Madam, campus in charge Mahesh Rogavkar sir for their constant support in every activity at Kangarkar campus. I am grateful to our respected principal, Dr. Prakash Deshmukh sir, and our beloved assistant professor Varsha Badwe madam, course coordinator, for providing their support in making this event possible. I would also like to thank Assistant Professor Smita Varkhade madam, coordinator MSW department, Assistant Professor Purnima Jangle madam, coordinator BCA and MCA department, for their contribution and presence. I heartily thank to all the faculties members for their efforts in making this session successful. I would like to appreciate today's host, Gojiri Shinde, student of LLB first year, for the efforts she has taken. And last but not the least, all dear students, thank you all for attending and patiently listening throughout the webinar. Concluding today's webinar, once again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Happy Women's Day to all of